Hi folks, and I'd like to say thank you to CEDA for the invitation to speak. The only regret I have is I accepted. The reason why I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, because it is a great deal of honour and pleasure to be here, is that at the time of accepting I had anticipated, planned and hoped very much for being able to say to you that we had achieved first hour on ship. Unfortunately, we're not in that position. You've read that, thank you. I'm going to touch on three things: insights of the Roy Hill experience, a case for change, and a vision and pathway to reposition Australia. Far too grand for what I'm really going to say, but nevertheless, it looks good. Before I start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Roy Hill, and you're going to watch the video. And there's another video at the back which is also interesting. Roy Hill, founded by Mrs. Reinhardt, who took up the leases in 1992, 70% Hancock, 30% from Marubeni, POSCO and China Steel Corporation. We in fact achieved the largest fundraising of its type in the world to develop the project, a very significant achievement. We got over a billion tonnes of high-grade ore, another 1.2 billion tonnes of low-grade ore, potentially a 30-year life. We will have a mine which is currently going to have a process plant here, doing 55 million tonnes a year, a mining operation over 320 million tonnes a year, a 340-kilometre railway line, 2 berths and a single ship loader. Quite a significant project. The project itself is going quite well. We are not where we'd like to be, but as you saw from the start end, the mining has progressed. You've seen railroads running, cars running on the track. You've seen ship loaders, or you will see, not ship loaders, but you will see stackers and car dumpers unloading, trains being loaded and trains running. So we are significantly down the path of commissioning. We've also got a significant amount of mining being carried out. And one of the interesting challenges which I reflect on at this point in time as we look at our project is that one of the challenges we now face is in fact to do what I've said to people we need to do. We are a margin-focused business. We're about to ramp up from 0 to 55 million tonnes. We are doing that rapid increase in production at a time when we need to show that we can maintain the focus on costs. And so this is the challenge to us. We need to be able to focus on cost and increase production. That is, we need to accept the challenge of walking and chewing gum at the same time. And I say that because, unfortunately, I think Australia's lost its way in the good times and perhaps has not achieved all the cost reductions it could have done. So as we turn on to the three key issues about Roy Hill, the critical parameters were our organisational structure and technology, our contracting strategy, and our licence to operate. The licence to operate here is speaking more about the regulatory environment in which we operate. In terms of our organisation and technology, we are a values-based organisation. We are and need to be margin-focused because we have a constraint on our production, so we cannot continuously pursue additional tonnes. We embrace from very early on risk-make decision-making. We are moving and working strongly towards removing bureaucracy, and we have an application of technology focus which started off with extending the scope and the boundaries of our remote operations centre based in Perth. The greenfields opportunity of a new business created us a great deal of opportunity, an opportunity to challenge paradigms, an opportunity to challenge the way we do things. It also had problems. The problems is that we didn't have a track record. And so people said, you can't do that. You need more money. You need a bit more of this, because they had been measuring us by the rest of the industry. So it's interesting. The challenge of a new business is also constrained by those, particularly when you're seeking funds, who look in upon you and cast expert opinions upon you about what is and is not possible in our industry. And the challenge to all of us in our industry is to seek what is possible rather than what we did last week. If we talk about our contracting strategy, it is fundamental to delivery of the project. We needed to go down an EPC path. We needed to go down an EPC path very clearly because of our funding constraints and our funding requirements. It needed certainty on price, schedule and outcomes and an integrated whole. We introduced a very large number of EPC contracts across a range of things, and they, as a strategy, I believe, have been successful. But we also have continued to support the capability building of our subcontractors and the people working on the project. This resulted from some discussions and undertakings we did as part of our 457 negotiations a very long time ago when we were trying to manage the risk of labour shortages. We undertook to put training in at frontline supervisory levels. We've continued with that promise, and I believe we have delivered to the Australian construction industry. Moving on, we have also a focus on strategic partnerships, particularly in the way we deal with our suppliers and our other service providers, and that is on the basis of our supply chain has also been part of and integrated with our demand chain. So we look back from our maintenance section back into our suppliers. But moving on from there, let me move on to the case for change. We believe there is a compelling case for change, and the experience of Roy Hill is one of those in terms of a case point. The Australian competitiveness, I believe, is significantly challenged. The costs that we have and the risks that we have with the current structures are very large. There is also the issue of risk, not only in terms of regulatory risk, but also of standards. It is my view that if you look across the way we deal with projects and standards in Australia, there is sometimes a view that the standards take over the role of companies in terms of risk management. I think there are some times when the ability to risk or manage your own risk and take responsibility for your own actions is taken out of our hands by standards, by the increasing and ever-increasing level of standards required. And there is also an issue of meeting the requirements of regulatory demands. And let's talk about those for a little more. In terms of the scope for change and the issue about regulatory processes, what we have done is created a book of regulatory waste or lost opportunity. In terms of this casebook, we have gone through and used Roy Hill as a live and a real example to identify areas where the scope has been modified, where what we've done has been modified to comply with Australian standards or other standards or regulatory requirements, where the impact of creeping higher standards have been applied to this project, which are not applied to our competitors. Now, some of that is obviously good as technology and the world moves on, but some of those also create a very unfair and uneven playing field. There is a time to take to get approvals, and that time is also a critical issue because by using the time, it becomes a critical parameter. So when you're trying to develop a project, and I think our project is an extremely good case in point, can you imagine us seeking to do the groundbreaking funding in today's market? Today, not last year when we did or the year before, but today. It would be a very different case. And it is very easy to think about the processes we've been through for our approvals process, maybe to have taken 6 months, 9 months longer, and then put us in a position where this project would have gone. So delays in approvals are real, delays in getting projects up are real, and the consequences could be very significant. It also has a secondary issue, is that once you accept that you do need to get projects going, and I think there is universal acceptance that all projects in the iron ore industry needed to be going to catch the peak of the iron ore price. So therefore, the issue of time is a great motivator to get an answer, even if it's suboptimal in terms of the outcome, because it's absolutely imperative in terms of time. And once you have approvals and other issues, then you have the cost and implications of compliance. And an interesting thing about compliance is that compliance and regulation and approvals and other conditions are created in times of plenty, or they were for us. In times when the price of iron ore was high, when the times when industry had a lot of money. Those times change, but sometimes the regulation don't. And so therefore, we do need to make sure that our regulations and our compliance issues take a whole of life, a whole of business perspective, and not some short-term, see, today's good, you guys can afford it. Because maybe in 5 years' time, industry won't be able to afford it. We believe that in creating this casebook, we have been responsible. We've been responsible by saying not just change, because we need less regulation or less red tape. We have briefed people about it. We have a campaign where we've talked to many politicians and many regulators. We have made specific submissions. We have documented the issues and the sorts of events which cause these costs and the total cost of those. And we have committed to do further work to further refine that, to provide a larger smorgasbord of options where people can come and have a look and say, this is real, this was true, and this is maybe a way forward. So we've also put additional work into making some suggestions. Basically, if you look at our project, we've had 10 years in the approvals process, more than 4,000 specific approvals, and I believe if I add up and go through the capital costs and the operating costs of costs and inefficiency, I can find more than $800 million. And that's a reasonably large amount of money. So if I move on, Australia, I believe, needs to be more competitive for projects. Not projects per se, but projects as a broader definition of business. We often speak of projects in Australia as though we need more projects, we need more investments. What you actually are saying is you need more business. In our project, we've worked over 30 million hours. That sounds like a lot of people. It is something like 17,000 person years. Over a 30-year life of a project, we will work something like 70,000 person years of work in direct employment. And I put it to you, do you want the 17,000 short-term spiky, or do you want the long-term perspective which gives you and your children and their children some wealth, some opportunities and some potential? And so I think we need to look within Australia at the context of ensuring that the opportunity to exploit projects through negotiating positions is not misused, and we look to the responsibility for the longer term growth of Australia and the work from that. The second part for new business is obviously we need to be flexible, agile and very technology based. I think the growth of robotics and automation is being consumerised very rapidly, and what that means is that we in industry will need to be very fleet-footed and very agile to do it. So we need to move beyond inquiries. The challenge is enduring, and we must be resolute in pursuing reform. Remember, the inefficiency you walk past today is the inefficiency you live with. Everyone in this room who's worked in the area of safety knows that too well. The level of safety you walk past is the level you get. It is something I remind you of in terms of inefficiencies and productivity. And we need to value the ongoing benefits more than just simply the construction phase. I'll leave you with this quote. The industry should take steps to induce the government to remove some of the various serious disabilities by which the industry is hampered. And you look at that and you say, I know who said that. That was someone last year. Almost right. It was said by the Chamber of Mines in 1905, and I'm sure that you all noticed it from my last speaker's presentation. 1905 was when the growth of the gold industry in Australia took off. Around that time was the peak. And here we are, some 110 years later, and it's at another peak. A pity about the middle. And this is a movie I'm going to make after in my job, if it goes back to it. So this is the movie I'm going to make, and it's called The List is Long and the Cost Significant. Hang on, my movie's not working. This is a bugger. Please work. There we are. The list is long and the cost significant. It is, for your interest, edification and enjoyment, a list of all the regulatory approvals which we've needed to get to bring this project to you. So thank you.